Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in life when your silence speaks louder than your rage, a moment when you realize that not every insult deserves an audience and not every attack requires a counter. Tonight, I wanted to talk to the ones who've been underestimated, disrespected, pushed to the side, and told to shrink. I want to speak to the soul of the person who had every reason to clap back, but chose instead to rise higher. That silence is strength, not surrender. In a world that glorifies instant reactions and clapbacks, staying quiet after being disrespected can feel unnatural, even weak. We're conditioned to defend ourselves at all costs, to speak up before someone else defines our narrative, to make sure no one mistakes our stillness for submission. But silence, intentional, powerful silence, isn't a sign that you've lost. It's often the first move in a greater kind of victory. There's a difference between being silenced and choosing to be silent. One is control, the other is confidence. When someone disrespects you, your first instinct might be to lash out, to clear your name, to defend your character. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Because not everyone who comes for you is worth your voice. Not every situation deserves your explanation. Silence, when chosen with wisdom, is a signal that you understand the value of your energy, your words, and your peace. Silence speaks in a way words never could. It says, I know who I am. It says, your opinion doesn't shape my identity. It says, my character will speak louder than your chaos. When Jesus stood before Pilate and was falsely accused, he didn't argue. He didn't justify. He stood in silence, knowing that truth doesn't need a defense when it's backed by purpose. That kind of silence is sacred. It's the silence of someone who knows God is handling it. It's the silence of someone who refuses to come down off the wall to address every distraction. The problem is many of us confuse silence with passivity. We think if we're not speaking, we're not strong. But silence isn't passive, it's deeply active. It's the discipline of self-control in the middle of emotional chaos. It's the intentional choice to protect your peace rather than perform for people. It takes more strength to hold your tongue than it does to unleash it. Anybody can react, but it takes power to pause. Disrespect is designed to pull you out of character. It wants to provoke the version of you that you're trying to outgrow. It's bait. And when you take that bait, when you respond in kind, you validate the lie. You give energy to someone who already doesn't deserve access to your atmosphere. But when you stay silent, when you refuse to descend into pettiness, you declare, I won't be moved by this. That's strength. That's maturity. That's growth. Silence also allows clarity to rise. When you step back and choose not to react immediately, you give yourself space to discern, to pray, to hear what's really happening beneath the surface. Sometimes the disrespect isn't even about you. It's a reflection of someone else's internal battle. People project pain. They lash out from wounds you didn't cause. And if you don't pause, you'll make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. But silence gives you the room to see with spiritual eyes, not just emotional ones. Staying silent after disrespect doesn't mean you're avoiding conflict. It means you're choosing your battles wisely. It means you're not letting someone else's behavior dictate your response. There is power in restraint. There is beauty in dignity. Some things are beneath your response because your purpose is above their opinion. You can't fight every fire and still walk in peace. You can't respond to every critic and still keep your focus. Silence is how you protect what God is building in you. You've got to get to a place where your silence is strategic, not silent because you're afraid, not silent because you're defeated, but silent because you're powerful, because you're growing, because you've realized that not every battle needs your sword. Some battles are won with stillness. Some battles are won by letting your fruit speak, your character testify, and your peace scream louder than any words ever could. We're not in the business of proving ourselves to people who've already made up their minds. We don't chase validation. We walk in truth. And truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. Truth doesn't need to compete for attention. It simply is. And when you know that, you stop wasting your energy on proving what God has already settled. Your value doesn't decrease because they can't see it. One of the hardest things to experience is being misunderstood, overlooked, or disrespected by people who never took the time to truly know your heart. It stings when you give your best, move with integrity, and still end up dismissed or disregarded. But here's the truth that silence will teach you. Their failure to recognize your worth says more about their vision than your value. We live in a world where people often assess others based on what's trending, what's loud, what looks impressive from the outside. But real value isn't always flashy. It's quiet, it's steady, it's rooted in substance, and sometimes people don't have the depth to perceive what's divine about you. That's not your fault. You were never meant to dim your light to fit into someone else's limited perception. Just because they can't see it doesn't mean you don't carry it. There are times in life when God will allow you to walk through seasons of being underestimated. Not because you're lacking, but because He's building something in you that doesn't need public approval to be powerful. He's teaching you to stand in the fullness of who you are without needing applause to affirm it. When people can't see your worth, don't try to shrink yourself to fit their vision. Instead, let their blindness be your confirmation that your value is beyond what the eye can comprehend. You are not what they say about you. You are not the rumor. You are not the disrespect. You are not the silence in the room after you speak. You are not the job they didn't offer, the table you weren't invited to, or the compliment that never came. You are more than their words, more than their reactions, more than their inability to love you right. Your worth was established before their opinion ever formed. Your value is God-given, and it cannot be revoked by rejection. People will often treat you based on their own wounds, their own insecurities, their own limitations. Sometimes their disrespect is less about you and more about the mirror you hold up to their dysfunction. They can't handle your confidence, so they call it arrogance. They can't match your grace, so they call it fake. They don't understand your growth, so they try to remind you of your past, but none of that changes the truth of who you are. Your identity isn't up for negotiation. There's freedom in realizing that you don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You don't have to perform for people who've already made up their minds. You don't have to beg to be seen. When you understand your value, you stop chasing validation and start walking in alignment. You move different. You stop lowering your standards for the sake of connection. You stop explaining your purpose to people who aren't even listening. You let your life speak, and that's enough. Rejection isn't always an attack. It can be a redirection. Sometimes God will allow people to overlook you because He's hiding you. He's protecting you from premature exposure. He's preparing a stage that's worthy of your calling. And while you're in the background, feeling forgotten, feeling like no one sees you, God is refining your character, deepening your faith, and anchoring your identity. So when the spotlight does come, you'll be ready, not just talented, but whole. They may not applaud, they may not support, they may not say your name, but you keep showing up, keep shining, keep loving, keep doing the inner work, because your value is not up for debate. It's not based on how many people notice you, praise you, or agree with you. Your value is rooted in your Creator, and He said you are fearfully and wonderfully made. That means you carry a weight, a worth, a glory that can't be measured in likes, titles, or human approval. You are allowed to know your worth even when others miss it. You are allowed to walk like you belong even when no one holds the door. You are allowed to take up space, to own your identity, to be fully and unapologetically who you are without needing anyone else to validate it. Because people's inability to recognize your value doesn't make you less valuable. It just reveals the level they're operating on. And you weren't created to shrink to be understood. You were created to stand, to rise, and to shine, whether they get it or not. Elevation requires separation. The journey to becoming who you're called to be often demands leaving behind who you used to be, and sometimes who you used to be with. Not everyone can go where you're going. Not every connection, conversation, or comfort zone will survive the altitude of your next level. Elevation isn't just about rising, it's about releasing. It's about letting go of what no longer serves your purpose, even if it once made you feel safe. We hold on to people, habits, and places because they're familiar. We crave comfort even in dysfunction because at least we know how it feels. But purpose won't let you stay stuck in the same cycles. Growth will eventually start to feel like tension. You'll begin to feel the friction between where you are and where you're supposed to be. That's the first sign of elevation. And with it comes the realization that everything can't come with you. You'll start to notice the conversations that used to fuel you now drain you. The relationships that once felt like home now feel like weight. The spaces that used to inspire you now feel too small. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. That's your soul recognizing that you're being stretched for something greater. But with stretching comes separation, and that separation can feel like loss even though it's really preparation. Sometimes God will remove people from your life not because they're bad, but because their presence was seasonal. They were part of your story but not meant for your destiny. There are people who are assigned to your comfort but not your calling. And the longer you hold on to what's meant to be temporary, the more you delay what's eternal. Elevation will always cost you something, and one of the first payments is usually proximity. You can't fly while clinging to the ground. You can't rise while staying rooted in the same old soil. Some soil is only good for your survival, not your success. You outgrow it, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with recognizing when a space or a person has become too small for your spirit. That doesn't mean you don't love them. That doesn't mean you think you're better. It just means you're different now, and difference demands distance. Elevation also requires emotional separation. You have to separate from the need to be understood by everyone, from the desire to explain your every move, from the urge to keep proving yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. When you rise, your perspective changes, and sometimes the people closest to you won't be able to relate to the view. That's not your problem to fix. It's your journey to protect. You're going to have to be okay with being misunderstood, with being talked about, with being questioned, because separation will confuse those who benefited from your stagnation. When you stop showing up in the same ways, when you set boundaries, when you start protecting your peace, people will start to accuse you of changing. And they're right. You are changing, you're evolving, you're becoming, and change always offends comfort. God will separate you before he elevates you. He'll pull you into the wilderness before the promise. He'll isolate you so he can strengthen you, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because where he's taking you, you can't afford to be distracted. You can't afford to be divided. Purpose requires focus, and focus requires separation from everything that pulls you away from who you were born to be. It's not always people. Sometimes you have to separate from old mindsets, from beliefs that kept you bound, from voices in your own head that tell you you're not enough. Elevation starts within. You can't go higher outwardly if you haven't gone deeper inwardly. You have to shed the weight of comparison, the heaviness of fear, the burden of perfectionism. Those things are too heavy for where you're headed. You're not losing your mind, you're shedding your limits. Separation is sacred. It creates space for God to download fresh vision, new strength, deeper wisdom. It creates space for you to meet the next version of yourself. The one who's bold enough to walk in rooms that used to intimidate you. The one who knows how to move in silence and let the results speak. The one who no longer needs the crowd to keep going. Because once you've tasted purpose, popularity loses its power. Not everyone will understand your separation season, but that's okay. It's not their path, it's yours. And as you keep rising, you'll realize that the view is clearer, the air is lighter, and the peace is deeper, because you finally stopped trying to carry what was never meant to come with you. Don't argue with small minds about big destiny. There's something powerful about knowing who you are and what you carry. When God places a calling on your life, it will always be too big for some people to understand. That's not a reflection of your worth or your potential. It's simply the limit of their perspective. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself wasting energy explaining vision to people who were never meant to see it. A big destiny will always challenge small thinking. Your dreams, your growth, your healing, those things will make insecure people uncomfortable. They'll start projecting their fears onto your future. They'll question your moves, challenge your motives, and try to shrink your momentum. But you don't have to engage with every voice that doubts you. You don't have to argue with those who can't comprehend the magnitude of your mission. When you begin to elevate, the chatter will increase. People will talk. They'll speculate, assume, and try to pull you back into old conversations and old versions of yourself. But maturity is learning to respond with silence and results. You don't owe small minds access to your big purpose. Arguing with them won't expand their capacity. It will just drain yours. And destiny is too important to be distracted by every critic. There's a reason eagles don't argue with pigeons. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. Eagles know their altitude. They know their wings weren't built for the ground. And when you know your value, your time becomes too precious to waste on convincing people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You begin to recognize that some conversations are traps, not opportunities. They're bait to pull you away from your purpose. And discernment is knowing when to walk away without needing to prove anything. Everyone won't understand the path God has you on. Some people are so used to the old version of you that they can't handle your growth. They'll say you've changed like it's a bad thing. They'll label your confidence as pride. They'll mistake your boundaries for bitterness. But that's not your burden to carry. Growth will always be misunderstood by those who aren't growing, and you were never meant to shrink just to fit their comfort zone. You don't have to argue to be understood. You don't have to fight to be respected. When you carry big destiny, your life will speak louder than your words. Your fruit will silence the noise. Your consistency will shut down the lies. The more you focus on what you're building, the less time you have to entertain what they're saying. Purpose is the loudest response to pettiness. You're not responsible for convincing people who refuse to see you clearly. Sometimes God will keep certain people blind to your calling because He knows they try to sabotage what they don't understand. Your job isn't to argue, it's to obey. Obey the calling, obey the process, obey the inner knowing that says you were made for more. Big destiny doesn't have time for petty debates. There's power in silence, in choosing peace over proving a point, in knowing that you don't have to defend what's divinely assigned. When you stop arguing with small minds, you free up space to fully pursue what you were created for. You start surrounding yourself with people who speak your language, people who see you, support you, and stretch you. The right people won't need constant explanations. They'll feel your vision in their spirit. You also begin to protect your mental and emotional space. Every argument costs energy, and when you're walking in purpose, you need that energy for creating, building, healing, and evolving. You can't afford to keep spending your strength on those who refuse to rise. Arguing with small minds is like planting seeds in dry soil. No matter how much you water it, it won't grow. But when you walk in purpose, you start planting in places that produce harvest. People will always have something to say, but their words don't define your worth. Their doubt doesn't disqualify your destiny. What God placed inside of you is bigger than their opinion. So instead of trying to explain yourself, keep building, keep growing, keep walking. The results will speak volumes, and the destiny you're walking into is far too important to pause for every side conversation. Peace is the loudest clapback. In a world that thrives on drama, noise, and constant chaos, choosing peace is often the most radical, rebellious thing you can do. It's easy to get caught up in the emotional whirlwind of life, responding to every insult, arguing back when disrespected, and engaging in the petty, loud back and forths that pull you into a space of confusion and anxiety. But the truth is, peace doesn't need to scream to be heard. It doesn't need to shout, because peace speaks volumes in the silence. Peace is the loudest clapback because it radiates a strength that nothing else can match. When you choose peace over reaction, you choose control over chaos. You choose to remain anchored, grounded in your values, your purpose, and your inner strength. The world will try to provoke you. People will push your buttons, disrespect your boundaries, and challenge your peace. But when you refuse to engage with the negativity, when you choose to stay still and centered, it sends a message far more powerful than any word you could say or any fight you could have. It sends the message that you are above the noise, that you will not be moved by the turbulence around you. You see, people expect you to react. They expect you to fight, to prove yourself, to defend your reputation. They expect you to get caught up in the drama to match their energy. But when you remain peaceful in the midst of their chaos, you defy their expectations. You show them that you know something they don't. Peace is a power they can't control. And when you choose peace, it becomes the loudest statement you can make. It's a form of resistance, an act of strength that says, I don't need to engage in this to feel validated. I am already whole. I am already strong. Choosing peace doesn't mean you're weak or passive. It's not about avoiding conflict or pretending nothing bothers you. Peace is about taking a step back and refusing to let the outside world determine how you feel or how you behave. It's about maintaining your integrity in a world that wants to drag you into its frenzy. It's a conscious decision to rise above the pettiness and to protect your energy. When you respond in peace, you are demonstrating emotional maturity. You are saying, I am not going to let this define me because I know who I am. There is a kind of peace that comes from knowing that you don't have to explain yourself to everyone. You don't owe an answer to every question, and you certainly don't need to justify your existence or your choices to people who have no intention of understanding. This peace comes from a place of deep self-assurance. It's the peace that rises from knowing that your worth is not tied to someone else's opinion of you. It's the peace that emerges when you no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone. This peace is a reflection of confidence, strength, and wisdom. In moments of conflict or disrespect, you will always have a choice: engage or remain at peace. Engaging might feel like the easier option. It might feel like you're standing up for yourself, taking control or showing that you won't be walked over. But too often, engaging only drags you deeper into the mud. The more you fight, the more you get pulled down into the negativity. And the louder you become, the more you validate their attempt to disrupt your peace. On the other hand, remaining at peace doesn't mean you're ignoring the issue. It means you're handling it from a place of emotional strength. You are not letting someone else dictate your response. Your peace is the armor that protects your heart, your mind, and your spirit from being tainted by the toxicity around you. It's like having a shield that no amount of chaos can break through. When you choose peace, you're also choosing to protect your mental health. Fighting, arguing, and engaging in negativity depletes your energy. It drains your spirit, takes away your joy, and puts you in a constant state of anxiety. But when you choose peace, you are consciously preserving your energy. You are not wasting time on things that won't matter in the long run. Peace allows you to stay grounded and centered even in the midst of chaos, which ultimately keeps you focused on your bigger purpose. The best thing you can do when someone tries to disturb your peace is simply not respond in the way they expect. Don't meet their energy with the same level of negativity. Instead, choose to rise above it. Let your peace be the response. Let your calmness be the answer. You don't have to justify your peace. You don't have to explain why you won't engage in drama. Let your actions speak for you. Your peace will stand as the loudest form of resistance. It will be a declaration of strength, wisdom, and maturity. In a world that thrives on noise, your peace will be a beacon of power that nothing else can rival. Sometimes the best response is no response. In a world where we're taught to speak up for ourselves, defend our rights, and never let anyone walk all over us, it's easy to forget that silence can often be the most powerful statement you can make. When disrespected, when provoked, or when confronted with negativity, our instinct may be to react, to defend, to argue, and to make sure our voices are heard. But in the midst of chaos, silence offers a form of control that no amount of words or retaliation ever could. The temptation to react to disrespect is strong. It's human nature to want to defend yourself when someone crosses a line. But responding out of anger, hurt, or pride often leads to regret. Words spoken in the heat of the moment cannot be taken back. And even though they may seem like the right thing to say at the time, they can lead to unnecessary conflict, further tension, and a loss of peace. Silence, on the other hand, does not make you weak or passive. It is a deliberate choice to rise above the situation, to refuse to let the negativity pull you down to its level, and to protect your inner peace. In many situations, people may expect you to respond. They may be waiting for you to defend yourself or to engage in the same disrespectful behavior they've shown you. But choosing not to respond is a form of strength, a decision to not give your energy to something or someone unworthy of it. Silence communicates that you are in control of your emotions, that you are not easily provoked, and that you know your worth. You don't need to argue with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to explain yourself to people who will never hear you. Sometimes your silence speaks louder than any argument ever could. The power of silence is that it preserves your energy. Arguing with people who are not interested in understanding you only drains your spirit. It pulls you away from your purpose, your peace, and your growth. Every time you engage with negativity, you give a piece of yourself away. You give away your time, your focus, and your emotional energy, leaving you depleted and distracted from what truly matters. Silence allows you to conserve your energy, to stay focused on your goals, and to protect your peace. It helps you remain centered and avoid being swept up in the storm of emotions that others may try to stir up. When you refuse to engage with disrespect, you also create space for clarity. Silence creates a moment of reflection where you can evaluate the situation, process your emotions, and decide what's truly important. In those moments of stillness, you gain perspective. You can choose how to move forward in a way that aligns with your values and your purpose. Responding in the heat of the moment often leads to decisions you'll later regret. But silence gives you the opportunity to think, to pause, and to act from a place of wisdom, not reaction. Moreover, silence is a form of emotional intelligence. It's a sign that you are mature enough to not be dragged into every drama, every conflict, or every misunderstanding. It shows that you understand that some battles are not worth fighting, and that your time and energy are too precious to be wasted on things that will not serve you. Silence is not the absence of strength, it is the presence of self-control. It shows that you have learned the art of discernment, knowing when to speak and when to hold your peace. Not every situation requires a response. Not every comment needs a rebuttal. Sometimes the wisest thing to do is say nothing at all. Choosing silence also protects your emotional well-being. Engaging in arguments and conflict can create a toxic cycle of stress, anxiety, and emotional turmoil. It can keep you trapped in a negative space, constantly rehashing the same issues over and over again. But when you choose silence, you break that cycle. You allow yourself to step back, breathe, and regain a sense of peace. You refuse to let the negativity around you control your emotions. You reclaim your power and maintain your composure no matter what others may say or do. There is a certain freedom that comes with silence. It frees you from the need for validation, the need for approval, the need to prove yourself to others. You stop seeking external confirmation of your worth and start finding it within. You realize that you don't need anyone's approval to feel secure in who you are. Your value is not determined by how others treat you or how they respond to you. Silence reminds you that you don't need to fight for respect. It is already yours, and your peace is your greatest testament to that truth. The decision to stay silent doesn't mean you're weak, nor does it mean you're letting people walk all over you. It means you've chosen to protect your peace, to conserve your energy, and to not waste your time on things that will not serve your highest good. Silence is not about avoiding conflict. It's about choosing the right moment to engage, knowing that not every conflict is worth your involvement. It's about understanding the power of your own voice and recognizing when it's better to remain silent than to give a response that will only feed the negativity.